When you think of Afghanistan, what comes to mind? Most likely you answered, conflict, the Taliban, or burqas, right? But of course, the country is much more than that. Did you know that Afghanistan has a night dedicated to poetry? That Arnold Schwarzenegger is an idol there? What if I told you that in the 1950s, Afghanistan was a very open and democratic society, and women could even wear miniskirts? If you didn't know that face, come with us. Today, you'll get to know an Afghanistan that goes beyond the headlines. Number 1. Geographical data. Located in Central Asia, Afghanistan is a mountainous desert country with dramatic landscapes and an extreme climate. It borders Iran, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and China. The Afghan terrain is dominated by the Hindu Kush mountain range, which cuts across the country from northeast to southwest, with peaks reaching over 25,000 feet, such as Noshak. This mountainous region is also the scene of frequent earthquakes. The climate is arid and semi-arid, with little rainfall throughout the year. The Registan Desert is one of the main deserts in the country, and the Amu Darya River is the main source of water for the population. The vegetation is sparse, with a predominance of grasses and shrubs adapted to the dry climate. Despite the challenging conditions, Afghanistan's nature is rich in beauty and diversity, with landscapes ranging from snow-capped mountains to arid deserts. Number 2. Country of extremes. Afghanistan is a country of extremes, both in temperature and altitude. In summer, the southern plains can register scorching temperatures of up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, while in winter, the snow-capped peaks of the Hindu Kush can reach minus 62 degrees Fahrenheit. This difference of over 100 degrees between the highest and lowest temperatures is one of the biggest in the world. The altitude also varies dramatically, with the highest point in the country, Noshak, at 24,580 feet above sea level, and the lowest point, Amu Darya, at just 846 feet. This difference of almost 24,000 feet puts Afghanistan in 6th place in the world ranking of elevation range. Number 3. History. Moving on, we need to talk about the checkered past of this country that has a history that is anything but tranquil. It all began with ancient civilizations, such as the Indus Valley, which left their mark with incredible buildings and artifacts. Then came powerful empires, such as the Persians, who influenced local architecture and culture, and the Macedonian king, Alexander the Great, who founded the current capital, Kabul. But the story doesn't stop there. Afghanistan was dominated by the Scythians, a nomadic people from Central Asia, and then reconquered by the Persians. In the 7th century, the Arabs arrived bringing Islam, which became the predominant religion in the country. A little later, in the 13th century, the Mongols invaded the region, followed by new attempts at Persian expansion. In 1747, Afghanistan officially became a state under the reign of Ahmed Shah Durrani. But the peace didn't last long. Between 1887 and 1919, the country became a British protectorate, and even after gaining independence, it continued to be the target of external interventions, such as Soviet rule, which began in 1998 and lasted about a decade. And history keeps repeating itself. In recent times, Afghanistan has faced decades of conflict and political instability, leaving deep scars on society. But the Afghan people are strong and resilient and continue to search for a better future. Number 4. Kabul, the capital. Anyone who decides to explore Afghanistan inevitably lands in Kabul, the vibrant and chaotic capital at the heart of the country. Kabul is a city of contrasts, where modernity mixes with tradition and the ancient past intertwines with the turbulent present. Busy streets, full of colorful markets and exotic aromas, are set against historic buildings such as the Darul Aman Palace, a symbol of 20th century Afghan architecture. The Afghan capital is also an effervescent cultural center, with museums housing archaeological treasures such as the National Museum of Afghanistan and lush gardens, which will of course be our next topic. Number 5. Babur Garden. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the capital, Kabul lies a haven of tranquility and beauty, Babur Garden. Built in the 16th century by Emperor Babur of the Mongol dynasty, the garden is a magnificent example of Islamic landscape architecture, with terraces, fountains, canals, and pavilions that invite contemplation and relaxation. In addition to its natural beauty, the garden is also home to Babur's tomb, a white marble mausoleum that is an important historical and religious monument. The Babur Garden is an oasis of peace amidst the hustle and bustle of the capital, which is a whirlwind of colors, sounds, and flavors. And while we're on the subject of flavors, let's move on to curiosity number 6 on our list. Number 6. Kabuli pulao, the national dish. Afghan cuisine is an explosion of flavors and aromas, with dishes that will leave your mouth watering. One of the favorites is balani, a flat, stuffed and fried bread that can be found on any street corner. The dough is thin and crispy, and the filling can be potato, spinach, pumpkin, lentils, and much more. But the king of Afghan cuisine is Kabuli pulao, the national dish that lives up to its title. Legend has it that it was created by the wealthy families of Kabul, who had the money to make such an elaborate dish with rice, mutton, and spices. Over time, Kabuli pulao spread throughout the country and earned the nickname Kabili pulao, which means capable, because only an accomplished chef could make it. They even say that an Afghan woman's chances of marriage depended on her ability to prepare this dish. Today, you can find versions of Kabuli pulao made with steamed long-grain rice, caramelized carrots, raisins, almonds, and pieces of mutton, which can be swapped for chicken or beef if you prefer. Number 7. World's largest opium producer. Leaving the world of sweet and sour casseroles and moving on to a more bitter reality, Afghanistan carries a heavy burden. It is the world's largest producer of opium, the raw material for heroin. This illegal production is worth billions of dollars, sustaining the economy of many rural communities, but also fueling addiction and violence around the world. To give you an idea, Afghanistan once produced more than 80% of all the opium on the planet, and heroin made from this opium accounted for 95% of the European market. The cultivation of the poppy, the plant from which opium is extracted, is an ancient tradition in Afghanistan, but it has grown a lot in recent decades because of political instability and the lack of other options for farmers. In April 2002, the Taliban supreme leader decreed that the cultivation of the poppy, from which opium, the main ingredient in heroin, is extracted, should be strictly prohibited. Anyone who violated the ban would have their field destroyed and suffer the penalties according to Sharia law. It is estimated that 20% has already been reduced. However, it is still too early to tell whether this ban will be effective in the long term and what its impact will be on the economy and the lives of the people who depend on poppy cultivation. Number 8. Girls raised as boys. In Afghanistan, there is a controversial cultural practice called Bacha Posh, which allows some families to raise their daughters as boys. This tradition has deep roots in Afghan society, where male sons are valued for their ability to support the family and carry on the family name, while female daughters are often seen as a burden. By raising a daughter as a boy, the family can avoid the social stigma of not having male children and allow the girl more freedom and opportunities in life. Bacha Posh girls can leave home on their own, go to school, work, play sports, and take on other traditionally male roles. The problem is that when she grows up and gets older, she learns that it's not possible for her to live as a boy, and no one accepts her as a girl. As if she hadn't suffered enough already, right? Number 9. Interference in the Olympics. Afghanistan's relationship with the Olympics is curious. In competition, the country has never been very prominent, and in 15 participations, it has only won 2 bronze medals. But outside the competition stadiums and gyms, the country has been involved in one of the most remarkable moments in the history of the Olympic Games. Want to know why? I'll tell you. In 1978, the country was plunged into a political crisis, which began with the Sour Revolution. These were Cold War times, and at that time, each country had to choose whether to side with the Soviets or the Americans. Few countries remained truly neutral. What happened was that with the revolution, Afghanistan became a socialist country and joined the group of countries aligned with the Soviet Union. If anyone thought that the United States would leave it at that, they were sorely mistaken. Soon after the revolution that brought Nur Muhammad Taraki to power, the United States launched Operation Cyclone, which, among other measures, armed some local groups to fight the new government. This turned Afghanistan into a real civil war, with the two groups fighting each other with the help of one of the world's 2 superpowers. Until then, both the United States and the Soviet Union had been acting behind the scenes, but with the crisis worsening and the imminent risk of the country leaving their orbit, the socialists invaded Afghanistan in 1979. This invasion was the reason given by the United States for boycotting the Olympics held in 1980, which had the capital of the Soviet Union, Moscow, as its host city. The announcement of the boycott was made just 6 months before the start of the Olympics and took the world by surprise. Many other countries followed the United States in the boycott, and in the end, 66 nations stopped participating. In revenge, the Soviet Union and some of its allies decided to boycott the next edition of the Games, which this time were held in Los Angeles. Thus, Afghanistan, a small country with no great relevance on the geopolitical scene and no tradition in the Olympic Games, was behind an event that is remembered to this day. Number 10. The war is not over. The Soviets' presence on Afghan soil lasted almost a decade. It wasn't until 1989, when they were already facing serious difficulties, that the socialists decided to abandon the conflict. But the situation didn't improve at all from then on. The years of conflict created irreparable divisions in Afghan society, and the weapons supplied by the United States and the Soviet Union fueled a war for power that dragged on for several more decades. The country's chaotic situation was the perfect setting for the emergence and proliferation of various extremist groups. As a result, Afghanistan was invaded again by a foreign country in 2001, when the United States began the so-called War on Terror. The new invasion was much longer than the first, and for 2 decades the country was occupied by both American troops and NATO allies. Once again, the problem was not solved, and after the occupying forces left Afghan territory in 2021, everything went back to the way it had been before. Number 11. The world's wildest sport, Buzkashi. Forget soccer, basketball, or volleyball. In Afghanistan, the sport that gets the crowd going is Buzkashi, also known as goat grabbing. No wonder it's considered the most insane sport on the planet. Imagine a game similar to polo, where players on horses compete for a ball with clubs, trying to score goals. Now replace the ball with a headless goat carcass and the players with tough knights, and you get an idea of what Buzkashi is all about. The rules may vary, but the general idea is to grab the goat, drag it across the field, and throw it at a specific point, the opponent's goal. The other players, called shapandas, try to steal the goat back, and then it's on. In Afghanistan, the local federation has even tried to put some rules in place to prevent extreme violence, such as banning direct attacks on other players. But let's face it, in a sport that involves whips and sticks, it's hard to keep the peace. Buzkashi has been played for centuries in Afghanistan and attracts powerful sponsors. The Afghans have even asked for the sport to be included in the Olympics, but so far, the decapitated goat hasn't made it to the games. Number 12. Blue Mosque. In the heart of the city of Mazar-i-Sharif in northern Afghanistan stands the majestic Blue Mosque, a shrine of faith and beauty that attracts pilgrims from all over the Muslim world. Also known as the Shrine of Hazrat Ali, the mosque is one of Islam's most important burial sites, where Ali, the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad and a central figure for Shiite Muslims, is believed to be buried. The Blue Mosque is a real sight for sore eyes, with its stunning Islamic architecture and bright blue tiles covering the entire facade. Number 13. Handmade carpets. Just as beautiful as the Blue Mosque is the tradition of Afghan carpets. Handmade from sheep's wool and dyed with natural dyes, these rugs are true works of art, with geometric and floral patterns that tell stories and reflect the local culture. Each rug is unique, the result of painstaking work by artisans who spend months or even years weaving each thread with care and dedication. Afghan carpets are famous for their quality, durability, and beauty, and are exported all over the world. Number 14. Handshakes between opposite sexes forbidden. And speaking of tradition, in Afghanistan, culture and religion shape social relations, and some traditions may seem strange to Westerners. One of them is the ban on shaking hands between men and women who are not close relatives. This practice is based on the Islamic interpretation of modesty and respect between the sexes. Instead of shaking hands, Afghans usually greet each other with a nod or a hand gesture on the chest. Number 15. Languages. Afghanistan is a true linguistic mosaic, with a rich diversity of languages and dialects spoken by its population. The country's two official languages are Dari, Afghan Persian, and Pashto. Dari is the most widely spoken language, used by around half the population, mainly in urban areas and in the north of the country. Pashto is the mother tongue of the Pashtuns, Afghanistan's largest ethnic group, and is more common in the south and east. In addition to Dari and Pashto, there are dozens of other languages and dialects spoken in Afghanistan, such as Uzbek, Turkmen, Baluchi, and Nuristani. Number 16. Herat was captured by Alexander the Great. Remember how we talked about the conqueror Alexander the Great? Well, not only did he leave his mark on Afghanistan's history, he also won the heart of a beautiful Afghan woman. In the year 330 BC, Alexander captured the city of Herat and built the ancient citadel that still stands today. But the Macedonian emperor's greatest conquest was the beautiful Roxana from the province of Balkh in northern Afghanistan. Roxana was the only woman to win the heart of the mighty Alexander, and together they had a son, the only heir to the empire. Unfortunately, the couple's happiness was short-lived, as Alexander died young at the age of 33. Number 17. Poetry Night. Poetry runs in the veins of the Afghan people. For over 1,000 years, they have told their stories, loves and sorrows through verses that echo down the generations. And in Herat, the city we've just mentioned, Thursday night is sacred. It's Poetry Night. On this special night, men, women, and children gather to share ancient and modern poems, recite verses that touch the soul, and celebrate the beauty of words. To the sound of traditional Herati music, sweet tea and typical sweets sweeten the evening, which lasts until the early hours. Number 18. Friday off only. If Thursday is a day for poetry, Friday is a day of rest in Afghanistan. Unlike many other countries where Sunday is the official day off, Friday is sacred in Afghanistan. It is on this day that Muslims gather for congregational prayer in the mosque and take the opportunity to rest, spend time with family and friends, and recharge their batteries for the week ahead. It's as if Saturday were Monday. Number 19. Most Afghans celebrate their birthday on January 1st. Another striking feature of the Afghan calendar is the day of the birthday celebration. With so many wars, invasions, and changes of government, many people have lost important documents and records, including birth certificates. So when the Americans arrived in 2001 and started asking for the date of birth for everything, many Afghans simply chose the first day of the year. And so the 1st of January became a sort of unofficial holiday, a day for everyone to celebrate their birthday together. Since the 1st of January is used for birthdays, the question arises, so when do they celebrate the new year? Which brings us to the next item on our list. Number 20. New Year. New Year in Afghanistan, known as Nowruz, is celebrated on March 21st. The Muslim New Year's festival is held in the city of Mazar-e-Sharif. During the celebrations, strong men must raise a large Islamic flag to announce the arrival of the new year. How do they know it will be a good year? If the flag is raised with a gentle movement, easily. And speaking of flags, let's move on to the next topic. Number 21. 26 different flags. Afghanistan is a country that has undergone many changes throughout its history, and just like the language, this is reflected in its flags too, and the number is impressive. The country has had 26 different flags since the 18th century. This variety of flags reflects the different dynasties, political regimes, and ideologies that have ruled the country over the years. Each flag tells a story, representing a specific moment in Afghanistan's history. Number 22. The famous poster boy. Believe it or not, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a real idol in Afghanistan. The Hollywood star, known for his muscles and action movies, is the role model for many young Afghans who dream of having a strong, defined body. Pictures of Schwarzenegger adorn the walls of gyms all over the country, and some even say that the former governor of California looks like a typical Afghan. Number 23. Modernity. Apart from Arnold Schwarzenegger, do you know what else is striking about Afghanistan? Modernity. By 2011, mobile phone coverage had reached 90% of the country, an impressive feat. Even though access to electricity is still limited, cell phones have become an essential part of Afghan life, transforming communication and local culture. Interestingly, even the Taliban have embraced technology, using smartphones to communicate and spread their messages. Number 24. Faith in secret. Afghanistan's only Catholic church. In Afghanistan, where Islam is the official and predominant religion, the presence of Christianity is practically invisible. There are no public Christian churches in the country, and religious freedom is restricted. However, there is one exception: the Chapel of Our Lady of Divine Providence, located inside the Italian Embassy in Kabul. This small Catholic chapel, authorized in 1933, is the only legally recognized Christian place of worship in Afghanistan. It serves as a refuge for the few Catholics who live in the country, mostly foreigners working in embassies or international organizations. Number 25. It was very different. Believe it or not, Afghanistan was once a very different place from the one we know today. In the mid-1950s, the country was known for its open and democratic society, where women had more freedom and could even wear miniskirts. It's hard to imagine today, but back then, Afghanistan was going through a period of modernization and opening up to the Western world. Women had access to education and the job market, and Western pop culture influenced fashion and lifestyle. Number 26. Buddhas of Bamyan. In the heart of Afghanistan, the Bamyan Valley was home to a priceless treasure, two giant statues of Buddha carved out of the rock over 1,500 years ago. These magnificent works of art, 180 feet and 124 feet high, were a symbol of the country's rich history and cultural diversity. Built in the 6th century when Buddhism was flourishing in the region, the statues were adorned with gold and precious stones, attracting pilgrims and merchants from all over the world. With the passage of time and the destruction of the monasteries by the Arab invasion of the 8th century, the gold and precious stones were taken to the treasury of some court in the region, and only the stone Buddhas, undaunted in their caves, dominated the region. Over the centuries, they have witnessed invasions, wars, and changes of power, resisting time and weather. However, in 2001, the world watched in horror as the Taliban destroyed the statues, considering them pagan idols. Number 27. Oldest oil paintings in the world. The caves that once housed the Buddhas revealed another treasure, the oldest oil paintings in the world. While it was believed that the technique had been invented in Europe during the Renaissance, archaeologists have found paintings in these caves that are more than 1,400 years old, just 1,000 years before Leonardo da Vinci. These paintings, depicting religious scenes, represent a milestone in the history of art and show that Afghanistan was an important artistic and cultural center in the past. Number 28. The Saudi Arabia of Lithium. Although it seems impossible to imagine a positive scenario in the midst of so many tragedies, Afghanistan can have a better future if it is pacified and exploits its natural wealth. The country has large reserves of lithium, and, as you may have seen, this is the trendy mineral, as it is used to make the batteries for the electric cars that are taking over the world. Lithium reserves alone are valued at more than $3 trillion, and there are still many other resources to be exploited. To give you an idea of how much lithium Afghanistan has, some experts are calling the country the Saudi Arabia of lithium. So far, all this wealth hasn't helped the country at all, because no company wants to venture into such an uncertain scenario. But maybe one day things will improve, and the news about this fascinating country will start to be different. And so we come to the end of another journey through our bello mundo. If you want to keep traveling with us, subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on our next adventure.